And there I am. So, welcome back. Oh, my hair is a mess. Apparently, I was just a mess in the cutscene. So, welcome back to the all dancing, all smiling crap of the world, and the third installment of our mini-series deep diving into famous cults, the Cult of Personality. I am Jax, smirking revenge, and the future ghost with the most, Vivian Noir, and bonus points to whoever gets those references. So, small update on the Love Has One cult situation. I do check it every week just to kind of, keep a finger on the pulse of the crazy that is happening with that thing unfolding in Colorado. Sorry, my cat is on the table, so the camera might move. So, a brief recap for anyone who may have missed it on the first episode. There is a cult called Love Has One that was headed by a woman named Amy Carlson. Her body was found oddly mummified, cat is in front of the light, in a house in Colorado with a couple children in the house. Apparently she had been dead for a while. Her body was wrapped in Christmas lights and like a weird shrine had been built around it, and 7 members of the cult were arrested with basically abuse of a corpse or not treating a corpse properly because they just kind of left her in the house. So no cause of death still on Amy Carlson yet. It is projected, or I guessed, that due to the declining state of her health in the last few months of her life that she did die of cancer or something like that. So they think it was natural causes. However, the group disappeared for a little bit, obviously, amidst this whole shenanigans. And it has recently re-emerged under a different name online. So now they're calling themselves 5D Full Disclosure, and members of the group posted a calming blue ocean graphic on their website with the vaguely ominous text, "God was here, she ascended, now it's our turn." Is anyone else getting Heaven's Gate vibes or just me? Just me? Okay, just checking. So 7 of the group's members were arrested in connection with the discovery of her body in the home, and all have been released on bond as of the current air date of this episode. 2 of the group members did go live on Facebook on May 20th with a picture of Carlson in the background on a stream entitled The Return of the Oracles. And then, how did this happen? One person said, "Everyone still loves mom, nothing changed." So, developing situation that could be happening with this cult. We will keep our eye on it as this news unfolds. Sorry, my cat is deciding that he wants to be part of the show today. There he is right there. Indiana Jones. Hi, Indy. So last week we covered a couple really interesting and out there cults which have active elements to this day. And this week, though, there's no exception this week. This week, it also has an active element that is still going on. But this one is an internationally placed cult, which through the deadly actions of instructed by its leader, it has been declared both threats to the public and even a terrorist organization by not only their own government, but by someone else's government. So that is a thing that first time we've ever covered something like that on this show. This one was actually, I was supposed to do 2 cults in this episode, guys. This one was so meaty and had so much substance to it that I was like, it's going to be a 2-hour episode. There was so much once I started pulling the layers away, it was bananas. As the Stefani proclaimeth, B-A-N-A-N-A-S, bananas. Hi, Andy. So how does one then get from religion to terror in about 4 crusades? Anyway, that was a smart joke for the room. So, but seriously, let's get into it. A cult whose leadership was tried for mass murder and crimes committed in the mid-90s, but were only recently finally executed in 2018. We are talking about Aum Shinrikyo, otherwise known as the cult at the end of the world. So let's get into it. Let me get the video pulled up here. I downloaded it last minute. Was having technical issues.
March 20th, 1995. It was a normal Monday morning, rush hour in one of the busiest cities in the world. Millions of commuters stepped out of their homes into the warm spring day and onto the platforms of the Tokyo subway system, awaiting the trains that would take them to work, school, or other morning destinations. Just a normal day. But also riding the trains that morning, waiting for the countless innocent bystanders, 5 bags filled with a liquid nerve agent. The parcels were leaking. The toxin struck quickly, stinging the eyes of the passengers and leaving them choking and vomiting, struggling to breathe. Some were left paralyzed and blinded. After the dust had settled, 13 people had been killed, and almost 6,000 were injured in 5 coordinated attacks on 3 separate busy train lines. The mysterious nerve agent left in the bags that morning for the unsuspecting commuters was later discovered to be sarin, a potent neurotoxin that had been developed by the Nazis, crafted in state-of-the-art homegrown labs. And the culprits of this mass poisoning, the deadliest domestic terror attack ever carried out on Japanese soil? An obscure cult known as Aum Shinrikyo, or Supreme Truth, who believed the end of the world was coming. But who were they? As Wired magazine stated in an article published not long after the attacks, quote, "This is the story of an ultimate cult, a wired, high-tech, designer drug billion-dollar army of New Age zealots focused around the leadership of a blind and bearded madman, armed with weapons of mass destruction. Cultists wired electrodes to their heads while chanting ancient mantras and logging onto computer nets. Methamphetamine, LSD, and truth serum, the product of homemade laboratories equipped with the latest gear, ran through their veins. Those same labs worked at refining enough chemical and biological weapons to kill millions. Other cultists attempted to build a nuclear bomb, while massive facilities were built to manufacture handguns and explosives."
You heard that correctly. Nuclear bomb. Nerve gas. This is a cult if it was ran by a James Bond villain. This is seriously the cult that Elon Musk would have once he does finally take his villain turn, because we know what's happening. We know it's coming. That man is one facial scar away from being a James Bond supervillain. Like, full on. No cap. It was so much more than the headline that we got, because the only thing we heard about in the US in a brief recap of international news was that somebody gas bombed the subways in Tokyo, which is terrible because they're very, very busy, and we didn't really hear more about it. We heard it was like a weird cult, and then that was it. It just kind of blipped off of the radar. Granted, this was also 95, which was the same year as Heaven's Gate, 1 year after the Branch Davidian thing in Waco, and 1 year after, 2 years after, I believe 2 years after, Ruby Ridge and the Oklahoma City bombing. So this was wild and out. Like, the 90s were like the Wild West. So we didn't hear a whole lot about it. But once I started digging into the details of this one, guys, it is nuts. It's nuts. Let's continue, me.
All of this activity went towards preparing for and then unleashing Armageddon. Like scenes of an apocalyptic future in a cyberpunk novel, this story is also the stuff of nightmares. Unquote. All of this was real, and all of this really happened. But to know where things ended is only half the story. To know the rest, we must know where it began, and it began, as these stories usually do, with a single man. Shoko Asahara, as he was known to his followers, was born Chizuo Matsumoto on March 2, 1955, to a large and poor family of tatami mat makers in Kumamoto Prefecture. Young Chizuo had health challenges from the start. He was diagnosed early on with infantile glaucoma, which caused him to lose sight entirely in his left eye and caused partial blindness in his right eye at a young age. He was sent to a special school for the blind, where he quickly gained a reputation for being a bully. He would beat up the other children and extort money from them. He graduated in 1977 and would go on to study acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, which are common career pursuits for the blind in Japan. He would marry the following year and go on to father 12 children. He would also begin to take an interest in religious studies around this time. Between working to support his growing family, in his free time he would delve into areas of study like Chinese astrology and Taoism, but later would also practice yoga, Western esotericism, meditation, esoteric Buddhism, and esoteric Christianity. In 1984, Matsumoto would establish Aum Shinsen no Kai, a one-room yoga studio with a handful of loyal devotees. He would change his name from Chizuo Matsumoto to Shoko Asahara in 1987, along with the name of the group to Aum Shinrikyo, which loosely translates to Supreme Truth. It would gain official status as a recognized religious organization by the Japanese government in 1989. During this time, Asahara would gain credibility by appearing on TV programs and magazine covers. He would eventually be invited to lecture at universities, where he seemed to hone in on exactly the type of people he wanted in his group.
So, wild already. Yes, this very strange blind man decided he was going to start his own religion. Apparently, after being a bully in school and beating up other kids, he thought, how can I best hone my bullying skills? Well, I can either, continue with these fists, or, you know what, let's start a religion and brainwash a bunch of people. That seems fun. That seems like something I should do. Indiana, who's standing in front of my light again. Missed her. Apparently he decided he wants to hang out with Mom today. So, yes, this started out legit. And I'm sure this started off, as most cults usually do, started off seeming like, relatively harmless. It started as a yoga studio, as a legitimate, fitness practice or a meditative practice. Sure, I'm sure the Japanese government was like, great, cool, a cool, peaceful religion of people that just want to, learn how to meditate and do, downward dog. Awesome. Yay. It turned out to not be that. So how did we get from yoga studio to attack helicopter? Well, a lot of steps in between, but we'll get there. Continue, me.
The group was dubbed a, quote, religion for the elite, and the leadership of the group honed in on recruiting brilliant but socially alienated young scientists from the chemistry, physics, and engineering departments of Japan's top universities. The group promised them direction and guidance in otherwise unfulfilled lives. He pressed onto a weak point of the up-and-coming young generation in Japan at the time. Those who had grown up watching anime and reading manga, those who'd immersed themselves in a world of fantasy, where the ordinary often find themselves extraordinary. Asahara underscored this with claims in his videos and magazines that spoke directly to the insular otaku heart. He and other Aum members claimed they gained powers of telepathy and levitation from the teachings, and offered to teach others these secret skills. In a highly insular culture where inner space is valued due to the lack of individualism and expression, it is easy to see the appeal.
Point of order. I would like to point out that this right here, this image on your screen, is actually a photo that they would use as an example of levitation, and not as just a guy jumping up in the air off of a yoga mat and happened to be caught on film right at the right moment. Like, snap a picture now! And it's over. So they would actually use this as a publicity photo. Yeah, he looks like he's taking a shit in midair. No joke, no lies. Like, that is a full-on gambled and lost, you're gonna have to throw these pants away face. 100. But yeah, they would actually use this as, look, he can levitate and you can too. And I'm like, no, it doesn't really look so much like he's levitating so much as it looks like he's shitting his pants. I mean, some people might want that ability and some people may want that superpower. Me, no. If I was an X-Man, that's not the one I would go for. Just saying. You know, pooping mutant ability, no. But that is, I saw that photo and I went, word? Okay, like, people actually thought that this was not somebody just jumping and the camera went off, like the shutters. No, this was, okay. To be fair, he did appeal, again, like I said in the video, he does appeal to these very socially awkward, isolated types that would read a lot of comics and would watch a lot of like anime, where this sort of stuff is common. So when you're told that, like, hey, this person has the secret to do this, that, or the other thing, maybe you believe them because you've been reading that your whole life and you kind of want to believe it. Or you're just dumb. I don't know. Levitation through flatulence. Yeah, he's just farting himself skyward. He's going to just like fart himself right into the cosmos. Continue, me.
Aum offered the ultimate inner space, one that would take its followers on a direct line to the cosmos and beyond. Quote, "All members lived in a purely imaginary world," observed Shoko Egawa, a journalist who covered the cult for years. One that combined primeval fear with a computer-controlled cartoon version of reality, unquote. Adds another Aum watcher, quote, "It was virtual reality made real," unquote. And so they flocked to Aum, the mecca for the bright and disconnected. Some of the most brilliant and up-and-coming minds in the fields of engineering, chemistry, and physics would abandon their jobs, studies, and even families to join the group, intrigued by the sacred mission of gaining supernatural abilities, spiritualism, and bracing for the apocalypse. It was Asahara who had blended the concepts of Buddhist and Hindu deities, meditation and yoga, along with the Book of Revelations. He saw conspiracy everywhere, propagated by the Jews, the Freemasons, the Dutch, the British royal family, and other rival Japanese religions. He claimed himself Christ in a 1992 document, and supposedly possessed the ability to, quote, "take others' sins unto himself and transfer spiritual powers to his followers."
I want to know where in that list of conspirators the Dutch ended up catching heat. Like, the other ones I have unfortunately heard through a lot of, paranoid cult leaders, they tend to like to blame the Freemasons, marginalized religions, the royal family. I'll even give him that one, but the Dutch, like, that one seems out of left field. Like, out of left. Like, I hate those damn butter cookies that come in the tin. Like, it's a conspiracy. They're trying to ruin the world with their dry ass butter cookies. Like, with their cheap and affordable furniture that's always missing pieces. That's Sweden, but whatever. Like, that just seemed like it was added on at the last minute. Like, and the Dutch. Wait, the Dutch? What? You don't like that? Okay, add it to the list, I guess. Damn, like, all right, dude. Oh, chocolate sprinkles. Damn, Coco. There's never cookies in the tin. It's always sewing stuff. I hate them so much. Like, I guess maybe that's why he was all heated about it, but whatever. Continue, me.
He would also outline a doomsday prophecy, which included a third world war begun by the United States. Asahara would claim that the U.S. was the beast, as outlined in the Book of Revelations, with Armageddon culminating in a nuclear attack. It was the group's duty not only to spread the word of salvation, since only those who joined Aum would be spared destruction, but to survive the end times also. This ultimate end to things, Asahara predicted, would occur in 1997, which left the group very little time to prepare to usher in the end. Asahara often preached that Armageddon was necessary for human relief. The guru instilled this belief in those young, impressionable minds around him. Hideo Murai, an astrophysicist who once won a prestigious scholarship to Osaka University, had quickly become Asahara's prized disciple inside Aum. The 30-year-old was the senior scientist of the cult, and he, with some of the other leadership, had ideas of how to push forward Aum's agenda and Asahara's teachings using modern science. They proposed using technology and tools to analyze their leaders' blood and brainwaves. Murai also proposed that such cutting-edge technology could be used by the group to protect itself from the coming disasters that heralded the end of days. For Murai, Asahara's twisted visions of a small group ascending the chaos of a crumbling and dying empire would neatly align with his own views. These post-apocalyptic visions of weapons and wars also inspired by the works of famed American science fiction author Isaac Asimov. Quote, "The empire will vanish, and all its good with it. Its accumulated knowledge will decay, and the order it has imposed will vanish." Unquote. It could be Shoko Asahara talking, but it is Hari Seldon, a science fiction figure 10,000 years in the future. Seldon is the key character in the Foundation series, Isaac Asimov's classic sci-fi epic, and he would give Murai and Aum their high-tech blueprint for the millennium and beyond. Seldon is a brilliant mathematician who discovers psychohistory, the science of true prediction, and warns that the Galactic Empire will fall into ruin for thousands of generations. Quote, "Interstellar wars will be endless," Seldon tells a skeptical but threatened government. "Interstellar trade will decay, population will decline, worlds will lose touch with the main body of the galaxy." Unquote. The Empire fails to heed his warnings, of course, prompting Seldon to take matters into his own hands. Asimov's core trilogy, written in the 1940s, depicts the hero's efforts to save humanity by forming a secret society that can rebuild civilization in a single millennium instead of the 30,000 years that they face.
Point of order. The Foundation Trilogy is a great trilogy if you are interested in science fiction, but I digress. One of the higher members of the cult was a large, huge super fan, you might say, of Isaac Asimov. He was an Asimov fanboy, and he thought that this sounded an awful lot like what Asahara was instructing them to do, and it kind of did oddly like mash up in weird ways. So, yeah, it's interesting how we had last week a cult that was basically kind of had the whole like sci-fi bent with, I'm gonna get me on a UFO that's following a comet and I'm gonna leave and deuces bitches, suck a dick, dumb shits. Yeah, no, like I love science fiction myself, but not as much as these people do. Not to the point that I believe that like Star Trek and shit is real. That this could really happen. Astro projecting part. You might, Crow. You get enough of that pizza, that stuffed crust, and sky's the limit. Literally. Shit. Toxic. Anyways, continue me. Talking about science fiction. Astral projecting farts, I know. Such sci-fi nonsense.
At the center of Asimov's universe lies Trantor, the ruling planet of an empire that spans 25 million worlds across the galaxy. Trantor is a planet of 40 billion that, writes Asimov, holds, quote, the densest and richest clot of humanity the race has ever seen, unquote. The surface of the planet comprises a single, vast megalopolis, extending a mile deep into the ground in an endless, mind-boggling labyrinth of humanity. Nature has long since disappeared, replaced by the sight of gray metal protruding skyward and delving deep underground. All that remains of the natural world is the Emperor's Palace, an island of trees and flowers amidst the sea of planetary city. It's not hard to see the parallels between Trantor and modern Japan, right down to the leafy grounds of the Emperor's Palace that stand in central Tokyo. For years, in fact, Japanese engineers have worked at developing what they call, quote, super-depth construction, with plans to build the world's first underground city. The coincidences could not have escaped Hideo Murai as he read a Japanese-language copy of Foundation, but the similarities didn't stop there. In Foundation, Hari Seldon gathers the best minds of his time, scientists, historians, technologists, and, like monks in the Middle Ages, set about preserving the knowledge of the universe. Seldon, however, despite his efforts of preservation, has in mind no less than controlling the future. Eventually, Hari Seldon dies, but true to his predictions, the Empire falls into chaos. To survive, Seldon's secret society, the Foundation, transforms itself into what else? A religion. His followers create a hierarchy of scientist priests whom the rest of the galaxy, having lost the command of science and technology, look upon as wizards and holy ones. Quote, "The religion we have is our all-important instrument," explained one follower. Quote, "It is the most potent device known with which to control men and worlds," unquote. The similarities to Aum and its guru's quest were remarkable. Aum's central mission seemed a mirror image of the Foundation's struggle to save humanity. Quote, "If Aum tries hard, we can reduce the victims of Armageddon to a fourth of the world's population," Asahara had preached. "However, at present, my rescue plan is totally delayed.
I had to go and interrupt myself for a good second because, yes, I forgot this slide was in here. And yes, you are seeing what you think you're seeing. They made their own anime about themselves. I can't. Fucking weaves. Like, OMG. I have not seen it. I'm still trying to find it so I can maybe watch it. It might be available on YouTube. But good golly gravy. Gosh, this, I can't. Why does he look like Japanese Jesus? Like, I'm very confused as to what's happening here. What in the fractious, fantabulous, phantasmagoric, fiddly-faddle fuck is this? Wow. Yeah, the screenshots from it look like gems. I mean, it looks bad. It looks really bad. It reminds me of Voltron, except with cults. Cultron 5000. They just form other cults into making a giant robot. A giant robot that brings about the end of the world. That is what happens. I cannot. They should never. I can't, I shan't, and I won't. All right, continue me.
The rate of survivors is getting smaller and smaller, unquote. And while all of this might have seemed the fantasies of the overactive imaginations of a paranoid guru and his techie followers, it was all very real to those inside Aum. And the pursuit of this desire to survive and thrive in the wake of the apocalypse would drive the group to extremes unseen in any cult before or since. The cult began attracting controversy in the late 1980s, with accusations of deception of recruits, holding members against their will, and forcing members to donate money, and even murdering a cult member who tried to leave in February 1989. In October of the same year, the group's negotiations with Tsusumi Sakamoto, an anti-cult lawyer threatening a lawsuit against them which could potentially bankrupt the group, ultimately failed. In the same month, Sakamoto recorded an interview for a talk show on the Japanese TV station TBS. The network then had the interview secretly shown to Aum without notifying Sakamoto, intentionally breaking protection of source. The group then pressured TBS to cancel the broadcast. The following month, Sakamoto, his wife, and his child went missing from their home in Yokohama. The police were unable to resolve the case at the time, although some of his colleagues publicly voiced their suspicions of the group. It was not until after the 1995 Tokyo attack that they were found to have been murdered and their bodies dumped by cult members. The cult is known to have also considered assassinations of several individuals critical of the cult, such as the heads of Buddhist sects Soka Gakkai and the Institute for Research in Human Happiness. After cartoonist Yoshinori Kobayashi began satirizing the cult, he was included on Aum's assassination list. An assassination attempt was made on Kobayashi in 1993.
You heard that correctly. This cult straight up started assassinating people. Zero chill. Zero fucking chill. Wow. Like, I didn't like that comic you drew about us. Assassination list. What's that? You criticized us in the media? Assassination list. Can you imagine? I want you all to imagine, close your eyes with me. We're going to do an exercise. Close your eyes with me. I want you all to imagine how many dead people there would be if this happened in the paranormal community. I want you to imagine that right now. The body count, y'all. If people in the paranormal community just started straight up assassinating each other because we didn't like something that someone said, did, posted, our rivers would be choked by their dead. That's all I gotta say about it. Like, Christ on a cracker. Wow, like, we didn't like your comic. Blech. Dead. Fortunately, they didn't kill him. It was an attempt, but an attempt was still made. Like, wow, that's some severe censorship you got there, Pally, buddy of mine, chum. I don't know, I'm running out of friend terms. Continue me.
In July of the same year, cult members sprayed large amounts of liquid containing Bacillus Anthracis spores from a cooling tower on the roof of Aum Shinrikyo's Tokyo headquarters. However, their plan to cause an anthrax epidemic failed.
Well, I wasn't gone long. Yep, they attempted to do a biological attack with anthrax. I mean, if none of this, like, if you were to not know anything and, like, we're just told and not know where this was, and somebody just gave you vague descriptions of, like, oh, they did this, they tried to assassinate people, and then they tried to spread anthrax, people would think that this was a plot of a movie, that this was a plot from, like, a Mission Impossible movie, or, like, something ridiculous, super villainy. Like, really? And what's amazing is the fact that I don't really think, it doesn't really mention anybody getting, like, caught or, like, and I'm sure somebody must have taken a fall for this, obviously. You don't just go out and spray anthrax like you're Windexing the population and don't get caught. And somebody, I'm sure a person took the fall for this, but it's not really mentioned, and they obviously continued after this. So I'm like, they were like, hey, nobody caught on to the anthrax thing. Meh, sky's the limit. Let's keep going. Let's amp up the crazy. Wow. Continue.
The attack resulted in large numbers of complaints about bad odors, but no infections. At the end of 1993, the cult started secretly manufacturing the nerve agent sarin, and later, VX gas. They also attempted to manufacture 1,000 automatic rifles, but managed to only make one. According to the testimony of Kenichi Hirose at Tokyo District Court in 2000, he mentioned that Asahara wanted the group to be self-sufficient in manufacturing AK-47s, with one working model smuggled secretly to Japan in order to be studied and used as a basis for future ones. Police seized AK-47 components and blueprints from a vehicle used by an Aum member on April 6, 1995. Aum tested its sarin on sheep at Banjawarn Station, a remote pastoral property in Western Australia, killing 29 sheep. Both sarin and VX were then implemented in several assassinations and assassination attempts over 1994 to 1995. In what would appear to be perhaps a trial run, on the night of June 27, 1994, the cult carried out a chemical weapons attack against civilians when they released sarin in the central Japanese city of Matsumoto, Nagano. With the help of a converted refrigerator truck, members of the cult released a cloud of sarin which floated near the homes of judges who were overseeing a lawsuit concerning a real estate dispute, which was predicted to go against the cult's favor. This Matsumoto incident killed 8 and harmed 500 more. Police investigations focused only on a single innocent local resident, Yoshiyuki Kaono, and failed to implicate the cult at the time. It was only after the Tokyo subway attack that Aum Shinrikyo was discovered to be behind the Matsumoto sarin attack as well. In December 1994 and January 1995, Masami Tsuchiya of Aum Shinrikyo synthesized 100 to 200 grams of VX, which was used to attack 3 people. 2 were injured, and a 28-year-old man was killed. He is believed to be the first fully documented victim of VX. The VX victim, who Shoko Asahara had suspected was a spy, was attacked at 7 in the morning on the 12th of December 1994 on the street in Osaka by Tomomitsu Niimi and another Aum member who sprinkled the nerve agent on his neck.
Okay, I'm not going to pop on screen for this one because I feel like it's important for you guys to read it. On the side where it says lethal exposure, look under breathing failure. If a person breathes in roughly a grain of rice worth of VX, the most toxic nerve agent on Earth, it can be enough to kill. That is all I have to say about that. Continue me.
The victim chased his attackers for about 100 yards before collapsing, dying 10 days later without coming out of a deep coma. Doctors in the hospital suspected at the time that he had been poisoned with an organophosphate pesticide, but the cause of death was only pinned down after cult members arrested for the subway attack in Tokyo in March of 1995 confessed to the killing. Unlike the cases for sarin, the Matsumoto incident, and the gas attack on the Tokyo subway, VX was not used for mass murder. In February 1995, several cult members kidnapped Kiyoshi Kariya, a 69-year-old brother of a member who had escaped. He was kidnapped off of a Tokyo street and was taken to a compound in Kamikushiki near Mount Fuji where he was killed. His corpse was destroyed in a microwave-powered incinerator and the remnants dumped in Lake Kawaguchi. Before Kariya was abducted, he had been receiving threatening phone calls demanding to know the whereabouts of his sister, and he had left a note behind saying, quote, "If I disappear, I was abducted by Aum Shinrikyo." Painful, unnecessary medical experimentation would also find its way into the ranks of the cult with the inclusion of Dr. Ikuo Hayashi and other medical professionals, but that would just be the tip of the iceberg. Reminiscent of a scene straight out of William Gibson's cyberpunk masterpiece Neuromancer, one 25-year-old Japanese army veteran and personal bodyguard for Asahara recalled his harrowing experience. Quote, "We have a new initiation," Dr. Hayashi said. "Drink this." Unquote. Inside of the glass, usually used for urine samples, was a strange yellow liquid. Quote, "Soon I got dizzy and was knocked out," the man recalled. "When I came to, I was on a bed."
And he told me I just drank someone's pee. No, he didn't say that. But it was a yellow liquid, and it was usually used for urine samples. I've been like, bruh, you're trying to get me to drink pee. Like, no dice, bro. I'm leaving. Yeah, microwave-powered incinerator. You heard that correctly. They straight up burned up that man. They killed him and straight up burned him up. And then dumped whatever was left in the lake. Also, point of order, side note, I would like to point out the amazing job that I'm doing with these Japanese names. Chef's kiss to me on the pronunciation of these Japanese locations and names. This one was fun for me because I took 3 years of Japanese in college. And I have not really used it, but I am I'm terribly out of practice. But I got to play around with it a little in this episode, so it was fun. And that is a weird hat in that photo. But yeah, they liked to do like these weird cranial caps where they would study brain waves and all kinds of stuff that I'm going to get into a little bit more here in a second. And it takes a turn, as these things usually do.
And didn't know what was going on. It seemed many days had passed, but I had no memory. When I touched my head, there were swollen spots. They were so painful both inside and outside my head. It was a dull, aching pain, unquote. These spots were, in fact, incisions made at 4 points in the young man's skull, 2 at the temples and 2 at the back. The man was later rescued and nursed back to health. Quote, "When I went home, I had a thorough exam of my brain," he said, "but a CAT scan showed nothing. As for the 4 scars, I think they might have put electrodes in my head," unquote. And just like the console cowboys in Gibson's novel, Aum's scientists were fascinated by the science of the brain itself. But not so much in expanding the abilities of the mind, but more into shutting them down. Mind control on a molecular level. Apparently, drugs, dogma, and conditioning weren't enough for Asahara. What he ultimately desired was a group of obedient zombies bound to his will. Electric shocks were used to blank the memories of disobedient or suspicious followers. During one 3-month period beginning in October of 1994, Dr. Hayashi administered over 600 shocks to 130 followers, many of whom afterwards could not remember the name of the group they were in, nor its leader, or even their own names. Which seemed counterintuitive on certain levels, since Aum went out of its way to recruit members from all corners of Japanese society. The higher up, or the more bureaucratic, the better. The cult reportedly counted among its flock as many as 40 young bureaucrats from Japan's top ministries: education, post and telecommunications, justice, construction, transport, plus tax collectors and regional judges. There were also reporters, editors, including a program director at NHK, the national broadcaster. Aum's membership list also included more than 100 experts in engineering, communications, computing, and other fields from companies like Toshiba, Hitachi, and IBM Japan, all high-tech firms whose state-of-the-art technologies Aum coveted. Some eventually left their firms to join the cult full-time, while others just donated large sums of money. There were also those that were considered quote-unquote sleepers, non-members who perhaps only attended yoga classes but could, with the right plan, be recruited into the cult.
Yes, you heard that right. Corporate espionage and sleeper agents. This is sounding less and less like a cult and more like the fucking CIA. What is actually happening? The FBI agent that's watching me through my camera right now is like, yeah, what the fuck is happening? Like, I want to know. I'm invested. I'm invested in this. Yeah, this branched out, found its way into Japanese government at the base level. And like, they knew who they wanted. They knew they wanted people that had influence and could protect them and had insider knowledge. Like, they weren't stupid. These weren't just like people they recruited off the street, just, you know, any schmo that just walked up and wanted to join this group. They were pretty selective on who they had because they wanted like the best and the brightest to be able to continue after the world ended, was their whole thing. Like, we're going to save all the knowledge of humanity and start over. Yeah. It gets better. It gets better, y'all. You just didn't think it was going to get better. It gets better. Hold on.
Aum's tentacles also reached deep into the Japanese military. Nearly 40 active duty members of the Self-Defense Force had enlisted in Asahara's army, plus another 60 or so veterans. One member at the National Defense Academy slept under a large poster of Shoko Asahara and vowed to recruit others before graduation. Even more helpful was a first lieutenant in Japan's anti-tank helicopter unit who leaked reams of classified data to the cult. When infiltration failed to get what Aum wanted, the cult turned increasingly to wiretapping. Like biochemical technology, the tools to conduct electronic surveillance were now within the reach of everyday people, and Aum took full advantage. The first tap had been discovered as early as 1991 by NTT, the national phone company. Aum's technique was simple enough. It reportedly obtained NTT uniforms and ID badges and put together a tapping manual for its security and recruiting teams. Favorite targets were rich potential donors and Aum enemies. Opponents claim at least 7 wiretaps were found in homes belonging to relatives and others opposed to the cult. It was the police, though, that occupied the minds most of top Aum officials. Fortunately for Aum, its recruiting had paid off here, too. At least half a dozen members of Japan's finest had joined up. One top official admitted that 2 of them belonged to the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department, widely considered to be the elite of Japanese law enforcement. Infiltrating the Japanese establishment was not enough. Aum needed arms for Armageddon. The cult, now endowed with millions of tax-free dollars, launched crash programs to develop weapons of mass destruction. Aum scientists had built a vast automated plant to mass-produce sarin, the Nazi nerve gas that would prove to be their weapon of choice. Others worked on synthesizing mustard gas, VX, and other chemical killers. In cult biolabs equipped with the latest gear, technicians cultured agents that caused anthrax, Q fever, and botulism. At the same time, assembly lines were set to produce 1,000 Russian machine guns and tons of TNT. All of this would enable Aum to survive the apocalypse and inherit the Earth. They worked to gather either materials or plans to build diabolical weapons that would have made any sci-fi tyrant or James Bond supervillain proud. Things like plasma cannons and fixed-star reflection cannons were lauded and praised. Aum's Ministry of Intelligence, headed by 25-year-old faithful Yoshihiro Inoue, was hard at work pilfering highly sensitive data from some of Japan's top tech companies. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, or MHI's headquarters in Hiroshima, was raided not once, but twice by the cult in a daring venture that one might expect straight out of the plot of a Mission Impossible movie. All of this in order to construct a death ray that would serve them as yet another weapon in their arsenal against doomsday. But while Aum prepared for Armageddon, it arrived a bit early in the form of an earthquake that struck Kobe in central Japan on January 17, 1995. More than 5,000 people were killed in what became Japan's biggest disaster since World War II. And for Asahara, the Kobe earthquake was the clarion call that heralded the beginning of the apocalypse. Though he refused to accept the earthquake as a natural act and instead attempted to explain it away through the use of a potential, quote, earthquake machine device, much like one designed by Nikola Tesla in the 1800s. But while the earthquake was indeed an act of God, Hideo Murai decided that the next major earth-shaking event in Japan would be an act of Aum.
So that is a freeway that is entirely tipped over on its side. As you can see, there were a lot of people killed in the 1995 Kobe earthquake. And they took that as their oh shit, Armageddon's happening, it's happening, let's go everybody, get your VX, get your sarin, let's go, it is showtime. Although there is that weird element of, we don't think it was a natural earthquake, that it just naturally happened. We think it was an earthquake machine, to the point that they even attempted to infiltrate the Tesla Museum and several different Nikola Tesla societies where they thought his original blueprints for such devices, because he did have blueprints for a earthquake machine and a death ray that he supposedly built that actually worked. And it worked apparently so well that he had to take the thing apart. Yeah, Nikola Tesla was basically the world's first James Bond villain. Look him up. He is fascinating. Man also kept pigeons. Fascinating. That they were trying to get their hands on his original schematics and his original blueprints to make these things. So, yeah, it is wild. It just continues to get even more wild. But let's continue.
Which brings us back to that fateful Monday. The hit squad would drive out from Aum's headquarters at Mount Fuji at sunset the night before. There were 5 total. 1 doctor and 4 vice ministers in the Science and Technology Ministry. The men chosen to unleash terror on the streets of Tokyo were in fact some of the brightest minds of their generation. Dr. Ikuo Hayashi, Yasuo Hayashi, Kenichi Hirose, Masato Yokoyama, and Toru Toyoda. On that morning, these 5 men blended inconspicuously into the morning crowd. They boarded 5 trains at different ends of the vast subway network. They had studied and known the exact times and station stops for each train. They also knew that by approximately 8:15 a.m., all the trains would simultaneously converge on Kasumigaseki, the governmental center of power in Japan. It was here that they would strike unilaterally in order to paralyze the Japanese state and begin the group's plan of world domination. After all, for weeks, police had been threatening to raid Aum facilities, leaving them no choice but to strike first. At 7:45 a.m., each strike team member sat quietly on his designated train, each one clutching an umbrella and a package of sarin wrapped in newspaper. A few stops before Kasumigaseki, each would place the package on the train car floor and strategically puncture them with umbrella tips. Then, as the train doors opened and the toxin spilled out, they would dart out onto the platform, escaping into the milling crowds and beyond, where their escape cars waited. The attack, despite the use of false flags in order to point to other religious and secular dissent groups and to throw the authorities off of the trail, ultimately backfired and brought the full force of the law down hard on Aum Shinrikyo. Several raids were conducted simultaneously at several cult compounds over the following weeks, and what was discovered within would leave a country and the world reeling. At the cult's headquarters near Mount Fuji, police would discover drug labs, explosives, and a Russian helicopter. There were also stockpiles of chemical weapons that would have manufactured enough sarin to kill 4 million people. Over the next 6 weeks, 150 cult members were arrested for varying offenses, but the ones at the highest places of the group, the ones responsible for the subway attack, remained elusive. On the 23rd of April, 1995, Hideo Murai, one of the masterminds of the Tokyo subway attack and the head of Aum's Ministry of Science, was stabbed to death outside the cult's Tokyo headquarters amidst a crowd of about 100 reporters in front of cameras. The man responsible, a Korean member of Yamaguchi Gumi, Japan's largest Yakuza organization, was arrested and eventually convicted of the murder. His motive to this day remains unknown.
So yes, that is an actual photo of the moment he is being stabbed to death, because it happened in front of about 100 reporters and in front of cameras that were going at the time. So yeah, again, this just, it gets, just when you think like the train to Crazy Town has stopped at each station, it just keeps going. This is a non-stop bullet train to Crazy Town. 4 million, yes, that you heard that correctly. That number is correct. They had enough chemical stockpiles. Now, the sarin wasn't made yet, but there was enough raw materials that they found at the base to make enough sarin to kill 4 million people. which is terrifying. They also found tons of explosives, and they found tons of truth serums they would actually use on themselves and on other people and try to think people that they thought were spies or suspicious. They made their own truth serums that they thought would, make somebody be honest. It was all really strange. Yeah. Yep. Continue. Me.
On the evening of May 5th, a burning paper bag was discovered in a toilet in Tokyo's busy Shinjuku station. Upon examination, it was revealed that it was a hydrogen cyanide device, which, had it not been extinguished in time, would have released enough gas into the ventilation system to potentially kill 10,000 commuters. On July 4th, several undetonated cyanide devices were found at other locations in the Tokyo subway. Shoko Asahara himself was finally found hiding within the wall of a cult building known as the Sixth Seishin on May 16th and was arrested. On the same day, the cult mailed a parcel bomb to the office of Yukio Aoshima, the governor of Tokyo, blowing off the fingers of his secretary's hand when the package detonated. Asahara was initially charged with 23 counts of murder and 16 other offenses. This trial, dubbed the Trial of the Century by the press, ruled Asahara guilty of masterminding the attack and sentenced him to death by hanging. The indictment was appealed unsuccessfully. A number of senior members who had since been apprehended and accused of participation also received death sentences. 13 former members in total. In response to the prosecution's charge that Asahara ordered the subway attacks to distract authorities, the defense maintained that Asahara was unaware of events, pointing to his deteriorating health. Shortly after his arrest, Asahara abandoned his post as the organization's leader and maintained silence afterwards, refusing to communicate even with lawyers and family members. A competency trial was undertaken to determine whether or not Asahara was in fact competent mentally to stand trial, but the judge determined that, on his ability to answer questions, his silence was willful rather than unintentional. On the 10th of October 1995, Aum Shinrikyo was ordered stripped of its official status as a, quote, religious legal entity and was declared bankrupt in early 1996. However, the group continues to operate under the constitutional guarantee of freedom of religion, funded by a successful computer business and donations, and under strict surveillance. Attempts to ban the group altogether under the 1952 Subversive Activities Prevention Law were rejected by the Public Security Examination Commission in January 1997. The group underwent a number of transformations in the aftermath of Asahara's arrest and trial. For a brief time, his two preteen sons officially replaced him as guru. It regrouped under the new name Aleph in February 2000. It announced a change in doctrine also. Religious texts related to controversial Vajrayana Buddhist doctrines and the Bible were officially removed. The group apologized to the victims of the sarin gas attack and established a special compensation fund. Provocative publications and activities that had alarmed society previously are no longer published. Fumihiro Joyu, one of the few senior leaders of the group under Asahara who did not face serious charges, became official head of the organization in 1999. Koki Ishii, a legislator who formed an anti-Aum committee in the National Diet in 1999, was murdered in 2002. For over 15 years, only 3 fugitives were actively sought. At 11:50 p.m. on the 31st of December 2011, Makoto Hirata surrendered himself to the police and was arrested on suspicion of being involved in the 1995 abduction of Kiyoshi Kariya, the non-member who had died during an Aum kidnapping and interrogation process. On the 3rd of June 2012, police captured Naoko Kikuchi, the second fugitive, acting on a tip from local residents. Acting on information from the capture of Kikuchi, including recent photographs showing a modified appearance, the last remaining fugitive, Katsuya Takahashi, was captured on the 15th of June 2012. He is said to have been the driver in the Tokyo gas attack and was caught in Tokyo, having been on the run for 17 years. On the 6th of July, 2018, Asahara and 6 other Aum Shinrikyo members were ultimately executed by hanging after their appeals had run out. The 6 remaining Aum Shinrikyo members were executed on the 26th of July, 2018. Shoko Asahara was cremated, his remains given to his youngest daughter, who wants nothing to do with the cult, and left the ashes unclaimed at Tokyo Detention Center. Aleph, formerly Aum Shinrikyo, is still currently active. In January 2000, the group was placed under surveillance for a period of 3 years under an anti-Aum law, in which the group is required to submit a list of members and details of assets to the authorities every year. In January 2003, Japan's Public Security Intelligence Agency received permission to extend the surveillance for another 3 years, as they found evidence which suggested that the group still revered Asahara. According to the religious news blog report issued in April 2004, the authorities still considered the group a, quote, threat to society. On the 8th of March 2007, Fumihiro Joyu, former Aum Shinrikyo spokesman and head of Aum's Moscow operation, formally announced a long-expected split. Joyu's group, now called Hikari no Wa, which means the Circle of Light, claims to be committed to uniting science and religion, creating, quote, the new science of the human mind, having previously aimed to move the group away from its criminal history and towards its spiritual roots. In April 2011, the Public Security Intelligence Agency stated that Aum had about 1,500 members. In July 2011, that was amended as the cult reported its membership at 1,030 members. The group was reportedly active in trying to recruit new members via social media, and again proselytizing on college campuses. PSIA officers conducted a surprise inspection on a suspected Aleph building in 2013, and sometime after April 2013, the Public Security Intelligence Agency took a photograph inside of Aleph's facilities. In this photograph, a bundle of papers is pierced with a knife on an altar-like object. The papers included photographs of PSIA employees and directors, police officers, and lawyer Taro Takimoto, who helped followers leave Aum Shinrikyo. At least at this point in time, Aleph still displayed portraits of Shoko Asahara and demanded followers' dependence using videos of him. In 2014, the Japan Times alleged that, quote, good looks and commitment to a cause demonstrated by Aleph inspired a new generation of admirers. Dissatisfaction with society and low degrees of success in life make them, quote, identify with the cult and, quote, adore the cultists as if they were pop idols. Japan's Public Security Examination Commission announced in January 2015 that Aum Shinrikyo's 2 spin-off groups, Aleph and Hikari no Wa, would remain under surveillance for 3 more years, starting the 1st of February 2015. On the 5th of April 2016, the Investigative Committee of Russia announced that it opened a criminal case against Aum Shinrikyo followers and that its investigators, along with Federal Security Service forces, conducted raids in Moscow and St. Petersburg to find them and confiscate literature, religious items, and electronic information. On the 20th of September 2016, the Russian government banned Aum Shinrikyo in the country, declaring it officially a terrorist organization. Prosecutors said that at the time the group was declared illegal, it may have had up to 30,000 followers in Russia.
How bad do you have to be to get declared a terrorist organization by Russia? Let's think about that for a second. I'm not even going to pop on the screen for that one. Like, Christ almighty. Yeah, that's really? Wow. And 30,000 members, like, this was not a small offshoot, y'all. 30,000 in Russia. Jiminy Christmas.
In November 2017, Japanese police raided 5 offices of Aleph in an investigation into the group's recruiting practices after a woman paid tens of thousands of yen for some study sessions. And finally, and frighteningly perhaps most recently, on the 1st of January 2019 in Tokyo, Aum sympathizer Kazuhiro Kusakabe told authorities he intentionally rammed into pedestrians crowded into narrow Takashita Street in Harajuku district, as a terrorist attack in, quote, retaliation for an execution. The attack left 9 injured. It remains unclear whether Kusakabe was referencing the 2018 executions of Aum Shinrikyo Doomsday cult members directly, or making a broader statement. And while the future of the active groups remains unknown, what can we learn about humanity and empathy from these past tragic events? Perhaps sarin attack survivor Atsushi Sakuhara said it best.
Then my message is, people ask me, why Atsushi, you owner, are you a fan of Aum? No way. It's not possible. But the message I want to deliver to the rest of the world is, I want to believe in humans. I want to believe in humans, even if people kill each other under the name of a religion, even if people kill each other under the name of the country, or even if the people kill each other under the name of the race, I still want to believe in the humans.
Can't get enough of the hive mind? Then join me next week for another episode of The Cult of Personality, where I cover the controversial and popular cult headed by a New Age guru, Rajneeshpuram.
Still muted. There we go. And we're back. We are officially back, y'all. So, yeah, that one's a wild roller coaster for sure. I was like, there's more, but wait, it was like layers. Like, as I kept going and kept reading and read more articles, and I was like, okay, well, that has to be it. Okay, well, that has to be it. Okay, well, that has to be, like, how much more was there? That's why I was like, there's no way I can split an episode with somebody else on this one. Like, I had to do this one as a single episode. So even though I said last week we're going to do 2, I lied. There was a lot. So we will do the second one that I was supposed to do this week next time, which is the cult that the Netflix documentary Wild Wild Country is about. And the guru Osho, if no one has heard of, we would always have people come in to the bookstore, looking for Osho books, which made me giggle all the time because they had no idea. They had no idea at all. Thank you so much. Thanks for the episode on Jared Leto. He's getting there. Joker Jesus is getting there. I might have to do one on him at some point. Like, look that stuff up. It's disturbing. It's disturbing. So thank you guys for watching. And the next time, hopefully next week, I'm trying to do this weekly. If time gets away from me again, it may be a 2-week thing. I'm trying not to do that, but sometimes things pop up and these things do happen. So I will try to get it out next week. Part 4 will be on Rajneeshpuram. Also, side note, how are you guys loving this graphic down here and the overlay and the thumbnails? So I love them. They're amazing and they look fucking fantastic. And I would like to personally thank fellow true crime blogger, paranormal investigator, paranormal friend, and compatriot Patrick McQuarrie, who made these graphics for me, and they look fucking stunning. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you for making those, because they look fucking mint. So thank you so much, guys. And then, of course, share the video. Share. That's all I can ask you to do. We're still sitting at a little bit under 400 members. I'm trying to do branded boosts as much as I can to get to that 500, to get to it. Our next benchmark is 500, then 1,000. So the channel is slowly growing. It's not growing maybe as fast as I would like. I'm kind of impatient. If anyone knows me, they know that's very true. And I'm like, what am I doing? Brr, brr, brr. I'm frustrated. So I appreciate every single one of you for being here every week and watching, and that's all I ask. As long as you enjoy the content, I will keep making the content. So I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, share the video, make your friends watch it, spam their inboxes. When they block you, apologize, and then spam them again. If you wanted to follow the link in the video to the link tree, it does have the Paraflix link in there. If you haven't subscribed to Paraflix yet, it has the merch link in there as well as the PayPal link in there. None of that is ever required, but if you would so choose, like Linda did today, thank you, Linda, you are awesome. And thank you everybody in the past who has awesomely donated something, either their time in watching me or money. Thank you so much. It is never required. It is always an option. So thank you so much. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I'm bold of you to assume I have friends. Me too. I have a few. I have like 2 really good friends, and I'm a mouthy person. So if I ever get kidnapped and ever get murdered, please do not tell 2020 that I was a star of a human being who lit up a room and brought smiles to the faces of everyone I knew. I'm a salty bitch that has 2 friends and a mouth that can assassinate people. Tell fucking 2020 that, because that's the truth. And they'd be like, yeah, no, she was not that like light up a room type. With fire, maybe. With arson. Don't forget, kids, you can't spell arson without. So thank you guys so much for joining yet again. I will see you guys next week. I hope, fingers crossed, we will see on the next episode of the Murder Corner with episode 4 of Cult of Personality, Rajneesh Purim. Thank you guys, and stay spooky and try not to get murdered. And don't join any cults either. Just don't do that. Have a great night.